Hello, this is Unsun with GameLeap, and in today's video we're going to be giving you the patch 13.22 mid lane tier list. The middle lane meta between solo queue and professional play is closing just a bit as the World Championship continues on. In today's video we'll be giving you some of the top picks of the patch as well as a plethora of picks that you want to stay away from, so make sure that you stay tuned. Let's go ahead and get right into this tier list, starting off with C tier. C tier is where all the borderline unplayable stuff goes. Things like Corki have been really strong in the past, but have been nerfed into irrelevancy, or they don't quite have a place in the meta. Another good example here is going to be Heimer mid. Heimer simply does not have the good matchups that he used to have, lacks solo carry potential, and is in general a little bit too easy to play against. So this is going to be our full dedicated C tier. As you see, certain flex picks like Karma mid aren't doing quite so hot right now, neither is Corki, Rise, and AP Varus. I would recommend that you stay away from these champions. Now let's go ahead and move up a tier and talk about our B tier. B tier is where the average, not so standout champions go. Things like Echo mid have decent matchups in most champions, but his extreme gold reliance makes him hard to compete with the champions in A and S tier. Therefore, Echo is kind of in the average bracket. B tier is where we'll find picks like Katarina, Malzahar, Vladimir, Karthus, and AP Gragas. The champions in this tier are of course stronger than the champions present in the C tier, but they're not quite as strong as the ones in A tier. So these will be our average picks. Now that we talked about B tier, let's go ahead and cover A tier. A tier is where we start seeing the good champions, the ones that have really strong matchups, oppressive lanes, or really strong carry game plans. Zed, for example, hasn't been performing super well in the control mage meta, on top of the nerfs that he received to the Hydra build. This leaves Zed in more of a good place. It's still an okay champion, better than a lot of the champions in average tier, but not quite super strong enough to stand out. In order to make a champion like Zed, Katarina, or even Victor work, you're going to have to put in significantly more work than the champions that are present in the S tier and OP tier. The champions in good tier have defined strengths and very clear-cut counterplay. They're quite easy to deal with once you understand them. Our next tier, S tier, however, doesn't really matter if you understand how to play against a champion perfectly. These are champions that will always be a threat, always be capable of getting off the ground, and that are easy to play for a newer player. We're going to be giving you the top 4 picks in the S tier, so that way you understand what makes these champions so strong and how you can play them and play against them as well. Just a quick reminder, if you ever want to learn any of the champions presented to you in this tier list, head on over to GameLeap.com, where I have spent hundreds of hours making courses for you to get into these champions as quickly as possible. See you on the website. Our first S tier pick here is going to be Lux. Lux is actually having a great time in the current meta. She does pretty well into assassins as long as we're able to survive the lane phase. She has good matchups into champions like Syndra and Orianna, which are at the forefront of the meta currently, and most importantly, no matter how behind we are on Lux, we'll still be able to provide utility to our team through our light binding, our massive slows, and our sheer pick potential. Unlike a lot of the champions in good tier, if you catch somebody in a full combo on Lux, they are generally not going to be walking away. For Lux mid, we want to go TP into other mages and then exhaust into the majority of other assassins. It is very hard for a champion like Zed or Talon to actually kill you through exhaust because the damage reduction actually forces them to hit all of their skill shots. If they miss an auto reset or a skill shot somewhere in their kit, they're definitely going to feel it and we can easily turn around and burst them. Lux's itemization is also quite good. We go Luden's Tempest, followed by Sorcerer's Shoes into Horizon Focus. This build path is another reason why Lux is in the S tier. All of the stronger mage items are able to fit snugly into her build, especially the overbuffed one, Horizon Focus. This item is becoming a hot topic currently, and all of the champions that are capable of building this are incredibly strong in the current meta. On the majority of our mages, we want to go for Horizon Focus third. Make sure to keep that in mind. Now let's go ahead and cover another S tier. Ziggs, since the buffs to his Q and the nerf to his armor, is still overperforming, but not quite enough to be an OP tier. This champion is really strong in the right hands, has incredible wave clear, really good matchups, and is capable of completely destroying an entire enemy base if left unchecked. The anti-snowball changes a couple of patches ago have really allowed Ziggs to shine in all the right ways. Where most champions can't afford to actually sit there and take plates, Ziggs gets to detonate them instantly using his passive and his W. While plates have a slightly reduced gold return, they are still really strong as an early game tool. The relentless pressure that Ziggs exerts is unmatched in this regard. If you want to still take plates and make a lot of money in the early game, there is no better mage for you. This champion is really solid, and the best part is that we don't actually have to interact with our lane opponent in order to access all these strengths. We can simply clear the way from the other side of the lane and then safely hit the turret when we have the chance. Talon is our next pick for S tier. This AD assassin, unlike Zed, actually has a lot of kill pressure no matter which build that we go. If you are against a tankier or more bruiser heavy composition, then you can easily go Conqueror plus Goredrinker on this champion to make sure that you could scrap with even the tankiest of them. If the enemy team is all squishies but you need to roam, Youmuu's is also a good option. If they're all squishy and you just want to blow them up as soon as possible, then we can choose between Duskblade and Eclipse. This flexibility is what allows Talon to be such a highly rated assassin, where the vast majority of AD assassins actually aren't that great. Even if we have a bad lane phase on Talon, we can always jump over a wall somewhere with a QR into W combo, instantly proc our bleed, and then run away. Most other assassins don't get this luxury, which is part of the reason why Talon is so strong, especially in lower elo brackets. And finally, last but not least, our final pick for S tier is going to be Syndra. Unlike Orianna, Syndra can actually have a bad matchup here and there. On Orianna, it's okay for us to make a mistake because of her marvelous self-heal. We have the massive slow from Orianna's W as well as Shockwave. Syndra doesn't quite have that luxury. While Syndra's W does have a slow, it lacks the movement speed bonus that Orianna's W also has. It is also substantially easier to hit an Orianna Shockwave than it is to hit a ball combo on Syndra if we don't have a ball in the proper position or we're expending the rest of our cooldowns. For these reasons, I won't put Syndra in S+ tier for the average player. Instead, we'll keep her in regular S tier just because she's a bit harder to pilot than some of the champions in OP tier. That being said, if you want to put the work and time into Syndra, this is a very solid champion that will reward your time and effort with a boatload of LP, especially if she's going to be this strong next season. With the mythic item removal and the item rework as a whole on the horizon, the traditional control mages usually do the best. Now that we covered all of our S tiers, let's go ahead and talk about S+ or broken tier. These champions are incredibly easy to pilot, super effective in essentially every scenario, and you can't really go wrong picking them. These champions are quite noticeably stronger than the ones on the tiers below them, with a highly skewed reward versus risk factor. All of these champions are very high reward with low to moderate risk. Our first pick for OP tier is going to be Vex. This champion is incredibly easy to pilot. She has really good wave clear tools, her Q's on a 3-second cooldown in the ultra late game, which is lower than Zed Shurikens. Her self peel is fantastic due to the W and her E. Her ultimate reset potential in teamfights allows her to carry. This champion essentially has it all. She combines the safe lane phase that all control mages have with a more high octane assassin sort of ultimate. Vex only loses to champions that outrange her, such as Xerath, but this also does change post level 6. As soon as that Xerath or Orianna steps a little bit out of their turret and they end up eating a Vex R, it is going to be quite easy to blow them up. Best case scenario for the champion getting hit is them surviving with about 20% HP. Most of the time they're not actually going to be able to survive and we're just going to kill them outright. Vex has a very diverse mythic option set. She can go Everfrost, she can go Ludens, and she could also go into Crown depending on the enemy team. If the enemy team is heavy dive, we don't generally need more damage due to our spammable low cooldown high impact abilities, so we can go Crown. If the enemy team needs to be CC'd a little bit more, then we can go Everfrost. This will allow us to start a fight by R'ing in, using our Everfrost, hitting a clutch E and then holding onto our W plus our Q. The layered CC from this mythic item allow Vex to be an absolute menace in basically every teamfight, which makes it one of her highest bot mythics. Full damage, however, is also a viable alternative for this champion. If the enemy team is quite squishy, or we're picking up an Hourglass earlier on in our build, we can simply go Ludens and then dive bomb into the enemy team and try to take 1 to 3 people with us. Another great thing about Vex is that she can basically take whatever rune that she wants. If you're against the melee, you can go Airy. If you are against a ranged champion, you can go Electrocute. And First Strike is also a viable alternative on the champion, so we could access the busted inspiration tree. The only one true flaw that Vex has is her weakness to ranged champions, but once again, one well-placed R can change that in an instant. Next up in OP tier is Naafiri. This champion is incredibly slept on and has been for a long time. Naafiri ate 3 to 4 nerfs immediately after release because she was simply too effective in everyone's hands, and that is without a doubt the case again. Unlike Talon, Naafiri can actually skip the majority of the lane phase by simply spamming her Q, which then allows her to scale. Unlike Talon, however, Naafiri doesn't have great early game damage. What makes Naafiri an S+ tier champion is the fact that she's able to stalemate essentially every lane and then hyperscale like basically no other assassin can. She has the damage of something like Qiyana without the terrible levels 1 through 3. Instead, Naafiri can stalemate any lane, she gets to go the busted First Strike page, and rush her Eclipse as soon as possible. What makes this champion super strong with Eclipse at the moment is if we land a Q while our Eclipse is up, it will instantly proc due to the bleed and the dog attacking simultaneously. This allows us to have a 100% downtime on this item and always get an effective use of the cooldown while it's available. When paired with Naafiri's incredibly high bonus AD scaling, especially later on in the game, it is not uncommon for you to get 3 to 4 Eclipse procs in a fight that's a little bit drawn out, as well as 3 to 4 resets of your ultimate. This is hilariously strong when we take into account the fact that we don't actually have to lane on this champion. We can very easily sit back, spam our Q, wait until level 6, wait until our Eclipse is done before we actually start skirmishing. What makes this champion so good even outside of that though, is that we'll always have priority on our jungler skirmishes around the mid lane because of our W's long radius. We can very easily flash into W range or E into W's range to assist our jungler and help them pick up kills in those skirmishes. That is just another reason why this champion is in OP tier. If you haven't played Naafiri, you need to pick her up now. Next up in OP tier has to be Orianna. This champion has been running amok since her buffs. She is present in essentially every single Worlds game, and it's quite clear as to why. She has an incredibly safe laning phase, her harass is downright oppressive, her teamfight presence is always sky high because of Shockwave, she has good utility, and basically no real bad matchups. Even the worst matches for Orianna we can turn around quite easily with a well-placed Shockwave. We'll have presence at basically every single Drake fight, and we can always fight for mid control no matter what. If you want to learn a control mage, there is no better champion for you to learn. She has a hit and run playstyle, but we could also go for more sustained damage utilizing our positioning. As long as we position correctly on this champion and abuse her long range, there is not really a single champion in the game that can put up a fight against her. Things like Lux and Xerath can go even against Orianna, but going even against Orianna is always a little bit scary because of just how strong Shockwave can be in teamfights. Orianna is also one of the better users of Horizon Focus, which is showing up to be one of the strongest items of the patch. A standard Orianna build will look like basically every other mage build, Luden's Tempest, Sorcerer's Shoes, or Ionian Boots depending on your playstyle, and then we can go Horizon's Focus after. Now that we covered Orianna, let's go ahead and cover the last two OP tier picks. Both of these champions are melee assassins with a more scaling focus. Number one is going to be Kassadin. Even though this champion did receive some substantial nerfs on 13.22, they did not succeed in slowing this champion down too much. The high value and prevalence of control mages essentially allows Kassadin to scale in every single game that he's against one. If the enemy jungler isn't super high tempo and Kassadin is allowed to hit level 6, you will have a nightmare on your hands very soon. As of right now, Kassadin is the ultimate mage counterpick, and he also does quite well into the number one blind pick of the patch, which is going to be Sylas. Cass is also very tanky, which allows you to make a lot of mistakes on him. We go Rod of Ages, followed immediately by Archangel Staff, and then Boots of our choice after. The scaling and build path on this champion are basically foolproof. All we need to do is not feed on him, which is quite easy if we're playing against a control mage. Go Flash plus Teleport on this champion, and don't be afraid to experiment with multiple rune setups. And finally, last but not least, our OP tier king is going to be Sylas on this patch. This is the ultimate blind pick, as long as Kassadin is banned. That is his only true bad matchup. If the enemy team has great ultimates, then fantastic, Sylas is going to pop off. If the enemy team has terrible ultimates, then congratulations, Sylas is going to pop off. This champion is very strong, his trading in lane is super oppressive. If he's ever able to get a kill or two, then he's going to snowball out of control. You need to be abusing this champion while you have the chance. I recommend going Ignite into the majority of lanes and simply just beating the crap out of your opponent as often as you can, but if that playstyle is not for you, you can easily go Flash plus Teleport and then play a more scaling owned playstyle. Regardless of how you choose to play Sylas, max your W first and then your E second, so that way you're able to have a larger teamfight presence. Make sure that you go front to back and then try to kill the squishies when you have the opportunity to, but don't overexert yourself. If you play this champion as a bully as you should, then he's going to pop off in about every single game. His matchups right now are incredible, his scaling is immense, and his damage is super high. Anyways, this is Unsung with Gamely. Thank you all for watching and hope you all have a wonderful day. I'll see you guys in the next video.